Today, Sigma have announced a brand new lens, the Sigma 150 to 600mm f5 to 6.3 DG OS Sport. This new lens has been designed specifically for mirrorless cameras, so it's both smaller and lighter than the old DSLR version. But the real question is it superior when it comes to AF performance and image quality? Well, I was lucky enough to get my hands on a copy of this new lens, so I took it out for a spin along with the old version to find out whether it's a worthy upgrade or not. Now I know what you're thinking, and yes, you are right, Frankie is quite possibly the most badass 7-year-old you have ever seen. I mean, just imagine if I was even half as cool as Frankie is right now, I probably wouldn't have to constantly seek validation for my own self-worth by posting videos on the internet. Just imagine what that would be like. But anyway, this video isn't about me and my own self-loathing. No, I'll save that for later on in life and with my therapist. So let's carry on and talk about this new lens and how it compares to the old version. Both of these lenses are incredibly well built and made from a mixture of metal and hard plastics. They're also splash-proof and dust-resistant too, which is a good thing really, because as you can imagine, that bike track was kicking up a hell of a lot of dust. Honestly, it was about as dry as a nun's. Countryside looked lovely though. I mean, you can't beat a good bit of British summertime. When shooting with these lenses, the immediate difference I noticed is that the new one is significantly lighter, weighing in at 2.1 kilograms or 74 ounces, whilst the old one is 2.86 kilograms or 101 ounces. The lighter weight of this new lens means that although it's still quite heavy, relatively speaking, it's way more comfortable to shoot with handheld. Whereas the old one I found to be just far too heavy to handhold comfortably for any significant period of time without my back feeling like it was going to snap in two. What makes this worse though is that the lens hood on the old model is also larger and made from solid metal, further increasing the weight at the front of the lens once it's attached. The good news, however, is that Sigma have clearly realised this as being an issue, and the new lens hood is made from a composite material which is loads lighter and slightly smaller too. When placed side by side, the new zoom is slightly shorter than the old one, with the rubberized zoom ring having been made larger and the manual focus ring made smaller. Sticking on the subject of manual focus for a moment, the new lens utilises a focus by wire system, whilst the old one has a fully mechanical focus. And although the new lens focuses nice and smoothly, I must confess that the old one is the nicer of the two to operate, as there's a physical clunk when you hit either end of the focus range. Whereas with the new design, it will just rotate endlessly without any cue as to when you've reached either end of the focus. But let's face it, with a lens like this, it's fairly unlikely that you're going to be manually focusing that much anyway, so in my opinion, it's hardly a deal breaker. On the side of the lenses, most of the controls are very similar, with both options including a focus limiter switch, a switch for deactivating or toggling between the two optical stabilization modes, and a switch for changing between the two custom modes that allows you to further personalize the lens performance by using Sigma's USB dock. Although both lenses have an MF to AF switch, the old one has a third option for manual override. The new lens has done away with this additional option, as it's now compatible with Sony's direct manual focus mode, which is accessed via the back of the camera and allows you to first find focus using the camera's AF, and then you can further refine it by twisting the manual focus ring. The old lens includes a lock switch that fixes the zoom in place either at the short or long end to help prevent lens creep, whereas the newer lens has a revised version of this switch and now includes 3 modes. L keeps the lens locked at the wide end but now doesn't work at the long end. T increases the resistance on the zoom, making it harder to rotate, but also helps to prevent lens creep when the lens is tilted up or down. And finally, S mode offers the least amount of resistance and allows it to function much like a standard zoom lens would. The final addition to the new lens is that it now includes 3 customizable AF lock buttons located at the 12, 9 and 6 o'clock position on the lens barrel to allow easy access no matter which orientation the camera is in. Both lenses have a tripod collar mount that can be loosened using a large thumb screw to rotate from landscape to portrait orientation when mounted to a tripod or monopod. Although the foot on the new lens is smaller, this can be switched out to a larger one if you prefer that. Though the advantage with the smaller foot is that it's also compatible compatible with most Arca Swiss tripod heads too, meaning that you can just slide it straight into your tripod or monopod head without needing to fix a plate to the bottom first, which in my opinion is a super handy feature. So how are these lenses priced? Well, at the time of me filming this video, you can buy the old lens on Amazon for £1,499 or $1,849. Though I should mention that the old version of this lens is only technically available for DSLR cameras, so if you do want to use it on your Sony mirrorless camera, then you're going to need to purchase a lens mount adapter too, ideally one that allows you to maintain full AF functionality. For this test, Sigma kindly lent me their MC11 Canon EF to Sony E-mount converter, though there are other brands available which may provide better or worse experiences than the model I'm using. Anyway, the cost of this new lens at launch is going to be £1,199 or $1,499, so even without taking the cost of the lens converter into the equation, the new version is clearly very well priced and as a result deserves to pick up the first point in this test. In terms of build quality, they are both exceptionally well built, so points all round there, but when it comes to handling, the new lens is quite clearly the better option as it's smaller, lighter, and has a bunch of updated features. Now, when it comes to AF speed, the new lens is just lightning quick and snaps onto subjects in an instant. The older lens is still pretty fast, but not quite as fast as the new one. In low light conditions, the new lens was slower to focus, but it still managed to lock onto its target with little fuss. The old lens, on the other hand, just kept refusing to lock on and would hunt all over the place, making it pretty unusable. Now granted, before you go flaming me in the comments section, I know these lenses are by no means designed to shoot in low light, but the fact that this new lens can still perform well in this test is certainly a bonus. When dealing with a moving target, the new lens didn't miss a beat and would keep locked onto the subject even when moving towards the camera at a fast pace. The old lens was equally as impressive and remained glued to Frankie as he hurtled past me on his motocross bike. So at the end of this round, I'm going to award points to the new lens as it's faster to focus and also has the ability to cope in low light if needed. In video mode, both lenses are able to keep up with a fast moving target with ease, even when shooting wide open. As for AF noise, the new lens hardly makes a peep. The older lens is still fairly quiet, but there's certainly an audible clicking noise created by the internal focusing mechanism. Neither lens suffers from any real focus breathing issues at either end of the zoom, so this is potentially another good plus point for videographers. So after this round of testing, I think both lenses definitely deserve a point for their performance. When it comes to bokeh, you're obviously not going to get as smooth or thick defocused areas as you would with a shorter, faster zoom or even a prime lens, but these lenses still provide a fairly nice result. Obviously, the closer you are to your subject, the more defocused the background will appear, creating a more pleasing result. In the bokeh balls test, these lenses provided similar results with round orbs at the center that turn slightly misshapen towards the edges of the frame. So at the end of this round, I think both lenses deserve yet another point. In our lens flare test, both lenses showed some signs of flaring, though to be fair, flaring really shouldn't be that much of a problem with these lenses as they both come with huge lens hoods included in the box and they both do a great job of protecting the front element. Shooting wide open at the 150mm end, both lenses exhibit a small amount of pincushion distortion, but nothing really to worry about. At the center of the frame, the sharpness is good with both of these lenses with nice amounts of contrast and no signs of chromatic aberration. At the corners, the new lens is noticeably sharper than the older lens though. At the 600mm end, still shooting wide open, pincushion distortion is still present on both of these lenses. At the center, they both provide a sharp image, with the new lens being very marginally sharper than the old one, though neither lens still has any chromatic aberration, which is really good. In the corners, the old lens is now sharper than it was at the 150mm end, but it's still definitely not quite as sharp as the new lens. One huge difference with these two lenses is the minimum focusing distance. This is as close as I could focus with the old lens at 150mm. I literally couldn't get close enough to the lens chart to fill the frame. Whereas this is how close I can focus with the new lens at 150mm. The lens hood was practically touching the lens chart at this point. What's more, the image quality at this distance with the new lens is still impressively good, absolutely tack sharp and not a scrap of fringing. At the 600mm end of these lenses, the minimum focusing distance is pretty much identical, with the sharpness also being too close to call an overall winner. On our longitudinal chromatic aberration test, the new lens showed a subtle amount of green fringing at the top, with red fringing at the bottom. Whilst the old lens, well, ignoring the fact that I literally couldn't focus anywhere near as close to the test chart as I wanted to, it still created a much more colourful result with green fringing at the top and purple fringing at the bottom. If I'm being totally honest though, when looking at the final images I created with these lenses, these small lens defects are hardly noticeable, and both lenses are capable of producing sharp images with true to life colours. Neither lens displayed any kind of colour cast either, so there was no real need for any colour correction in post-production. So at the end of this test, I'm going to award the final point for image quality to the new lens, as clearly it has a number of improvements over the older version. So going back and answering my original question, is this new lens better than the old one? You bet your goddamn testicles it is. In all seriousness though, full credit to Sigma on this one. I honestly think that they've hit the nail on the head with the improvements they've made to this lens. It's smaller, lighter, sharper, faster than the original version, which is kind of everything you could ask for. But the next big test for this lens is to see whether it can handle itself against its rivals, namely the Sony 200-600 f5.6 to 6.3, the Sony 100-400mm f4.5 to 5.6 G Master, and also the Tamron 150-500mm f5 to 6.7. Well, if you're interested to find out too, then the good news for you is you won't have to wait that long, because in my next video, I'm going to be putting all of those lenses into the ring to find out which is the absolute best option.